Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tennis Weekly with Joel, Kim, and Chris. On today's Roland Garros Day 14 catch up.
Mirra Andreeva wins her first Grand Slam in Paris,
Chwalinska's dream run ends in final defeat.
and Marcel Granollers and Horacio Zeballos defend their title in men's doubles.
Chris, today is the 6th of June. We are here to catch up on Roland Garros Day 14 at Tennis Weekly HQ. We have just had the women's final take place between Mirra Andreeva and Maja Chwalinska. And we have a new champion, which we knew coming into this. And it at the end of the day, despite all the shocks and everyone going out, Sabalenka sort of crumbling, we still have a champion who actually a lot of people would probably have predicted and we felt would pick up a Grand Slam one day. So all in all, not a big surprise. But what was your initial reflection from today's women's final?
Well, I think it was a very great result for Andreeva. I think I'm very pleased for her that she has kind of got the Grand Slam. I think that was the next logical step for her, but she got a little bit kind of derailed towards the end of last season after those 1000 triumphs. So I think it was a real performance of maturity. That was one of my key takeouts from this was that she did have that wobble when she served for it, but she gathered herself. She had such a great game plan. She was so much more level-headed than I thought she might be in the scenario that she was in. I think that's something she's been working on. So I guess my reaction is that it feels like a very fitting end given the fact that I think she has played the best tennis across the fortnight. I mean, she's been so dominant, only losing one set, and that performance against Christea, I mean, it really showed the level she could go to and the level that a lot of people have thought that she could. So, kind of reflecting on the final, maybe it wasn't the most entertaining match of the entire tournament, but at the same time, you have to appreciate just how much Mirra Andreeva has become, a top talent on the tour.
Yeah, and she is now the first teenager to pick up the Roland Garros title since Swiatek did it in 2020. See, Mirra is just 19 years of age and only just 19, really. She's 19 years and 39 days specifically. So she's a young 19. And she's the youngest women's champion at Roland Garros since Monica Seles did it back in 1992. But, we've known about her for a good few years. Many people kind of saying it's like been her destiny to win this title and win a Grand Slam, and it's kind of we're all just kind of a bit like, yeah, well, she's finally done it. We always knew she would. It was just a matter of like when, not if. But was there any point in this match where you did think she might not get it done? Because the start of the match was they were trading breaks, and I mean, Chwalinska obviously started with a double fault, but then we saw a couple thrown into one of Andreeva's games, I think at like 2-all. So there was a bit of edginess, I think, from both sides, but it was kind of a sense of who would take control of that first set when it was 3-all, and boy did Andreeva take control. She then went on a run of I think 9 games on the trot. So was that the kind of crucial moment where really Chwalinska had to kind of maybe get that first set to have much of a chance over the course of the match?
I think so. And I think as the match went on, I mean, Andreeva really did just grow in confidence. I think what was so impressive was that the game plan was so well constructed. I think when it started to work for her, I think the nerves settled. She focused on what she needed to do, and she actually tried to not overpower her initially. She actually tried to make Chwalinska actually play more aggressively than she normally would like to. And I think what's been so successful for her is that the other players have added the pace, and then Chwalinska was able to kind of weave her web and kind of counterpunch from that. And I think that's where Andreeva was careful not to give her too much, not to overhit, especially. And I think that's when it was clear that the errors weren't only going to come from, Mirra's side of the court. It was actually Maja who was also kind of making some mistakes in those moments. So I think that gave her a lot of confidence that she didn't have to go for big winners. And then I think in that second set, I think she really just grew and grew in confidence with the fact that, she actually could win the long points. She kind of figured her out a little bit. And then she could also hit some fantastic winners from the back of the court. All until that final game, final game before the final game, where she had to serve it out. And that was, so nerve-wracking, I'm sure. And it didn't quite go to plan. But sometimes it's easier to win on the return, isn't it, Kim?
It is. I think, we saw her edginess at the end, and she hit quite a number of errors in that game. But the good thing is she had quite a considerable lead. And I just don't think Maja had the sort of energy or I don't know, she didn't seem like she had much
It's a lot
more
of
to
tennis
come
she's
out of
played,
her.
Kim. An awful
Yeah,
lot of tennis.
I think coming into it, she'd played sort of almost like 2.5 or so hours more than Andreeva. And obviously coming through qualies, it's just that extra like week of tennis almost. I mean, she didn't have money, did she, to pay for her accommodation? A sponsor, Iga Swiatek's drink sponsor, had to step in to to help fund her accommodation, because she's ended up staying such a long time, which she obviously didn't realize so that she would be. So yeah, I think it just this was one match too far. So it was the first top 10 player that she'd played, and I think you could tell the difference. And there were shots that Maja had been getting in
Mm.
all her other matches that she just wasn't today. So it was Andreeva putting a block on that, and also I think Maja just kind of finally sort of fading out really with energy. And obviously she's had her thighs strapped all tournament, so obviously managing something there as well.
Yeah, and a bit
um
snuffly. She was impressed the last time she kind of did an interview. I think she was getting a little bit of a cold as well. So, I mean, it's tough out there. It really is. We saw that yesterday as well, how hard it is, and if you catch something, and maybe she wasn't on absolute tip-top form, but I think whatever you say about the performance, I mean, the journey she's got to get here, I mean, it was unbelievable. The fight that she had, even, when it was potentially a risk of getting bageled, I think she's such a, tenacious player in the fact that she then, got 2 games back. And Kim, you did say to me, you thought, oh, is this another result from one game away that's going to turn around?
Yeah, I think the score was like 6-3, 5-1. And I was like, oh, well, the comeback starts here, because we've seen, other top players lose from a winning advantage like that. But yeah, not today. We got kind of a more straightforward encounter, I would say. And I mean, Team Nike were prepared, weren't they? Because Mirra had a custom jacket which was ready for when she won. Her team had all the t-shirts ready that they put on as soon as she won. So yeah, they knew this day was coming. I guess they had it
When
all
did
just
they get that
prepared,
made, is what I
ready
always
in
think,
case.
like, and who gives it to you? Do you know it's in your bag? I always think, what happens if you don't win? Do you all have to like return them? And then these t-shirts that were never worn, maybe they've got like an archive
Put them on
for them.
eBay.
Put them on eBay. Yeah, exactly. But I did love the fact it did say, like, I'd like to thank myself, which is a Mirror classic quote from when she has won some of her big titles. She kind of always says that at the end of her, or sometimes at the beginning of her acceptance speeches, she says she'd like to thank herself. And I think it's quite refreshing. It's quite funny though, because she's saying, like, for all the stuff that she's done, giving 100% every day to be a better player in person, fighting the demons inside of her, and kind of getting through all of it, and the nerves, and thanking herself for working so hard. So I think we should thank ourselves, for the effort that we do more. I think it's also quite a fun trademark for them to go for, because I think sometimes they struggle for personality when it comes to top tier stars. We're not naming names here, where she's got buckets of it. I mean, her and Conchita as a double actor, truly great fun to watch. And I think she's a very refreshing force, both on and off the court. So I like the fact they made something personal to her, but I also do think that the pressure is on then. If you know that's in your bag, your sponsor has prepared you a jacket that you may never wear. It's I mean, I personally would feel that was a bit much for me to cope with, Kim.
Yeah, I would find that I wouldn't need that extra level of pressure. But yeah, I think it's a nice touch. And I think, she thanked her sports psychologist that she's been working with now for a while. And I think, congratulating yourself, being, grateful for what you've done, what you've learned. I think that was a really positive thing. And probably a lot of people don't actually do that. And we should probably all do a bit of that. And, so that's a nice like message to everyone, maybe, but yeah, I think also I laughed that it was Mary Pierce coming onto the court to present the trophy, because she is the player that back in 2000 beat Conchita Martinez. So they were playing, like a montage of clips from that final. And yeah, I wonder how Conchita felt about that. I'm sure she was just thrilled that Mirra had won, but it's, reliving her loss 26 years ago
Oh, it's not what you
was
expect, is it?
entertaining.
When it's
Yeah.
like, of all the people who could be in the box and she's on court with, well, not on court, but she's watching her player win, and then she's like remembering when she lost. But I thought it was great to see Mary Pierce, and I thought a bit worried for her at one stage, Kim, because she's wearing this sort of big blue cape, and it's very windy out there. I think both players handle the conditions well, but I thought she was going to take off at one point.
Yeah, it was sort of gusts of wind. And we saw that in the match, didn't we? Because they had to stop a few times because there's just
The
clay
clay.
swirling around. So it's not easy. But I think they both did well. And Andreeva not hampered by it really at all. Very mature, calm and professional. And we did wonder before this match whether she would deal with the pressure, and she absolutely did. All pressure was on her, really. She was the one that had it to lose.
Mm.
Helinska was kind of everything to gain, nothing to lose, being a qualifier and not really expected to go all the way. But yeah, Andreeva, I think, showing that, I guess, that slight dip that she's had since she won her Masters titles last year, actually probably having that sort of break in form has maybe allowed her to regroup and sort of not rise to the top as astronomically fast as you can. And we've seen players really struggle with that. It's probably better to go a little bit slower, but kind of consistent
Mm.
progress.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think, at the ripe old age of, what was it, 19 and
19 years,
39 days.
39 days.
Yes, I know. She's waited a long time for this
Gosh.
one. But it does make me think, as you say, we see these breakout stars and it almost happens too much too soon. I think Ostapenko said the same thing. If she'd have won it, 2 years ago, she would have been the same age or actually younger than Ostapenko was when that happened. And it's something that a lot of players struggle with, because things happen so quickly. And I think actually it's taught her how to work for things and how to manage herself better. And she looked very, very composed, very complete as a player and as a person out there. And I think that's not what we've always said about her. Last year in the Brasson result, the moment got to her. She found that very, very tricky. We have seen her get very frustrated, which is perfectly natural for a young player to express your emotions. But I just think it's something where she's built another game. I think she didn't go to the end of season finals despite having such a good start to the season. And actually, maybe it was for the best that she waited for a season where she really could put together something special. She's number one in the race now, which is kind of crazy when you think about, Sabalenka and Rybakina obviously having such great starts to the season. But, Andreeva's on top of that pile now in terms of the consistency she's had across the year. So a question I have for you though, Kim, is does this mean that she's very much right up there? I mean, she's not ranked quite as highly as some players who've won slams are. I think she will move to, I think it's number 6 in the world. There are players who have won slams above her and some finalists, and Nisamova's had 2 finals. Do you think this is really cementing the fact that she is now always going to be a Grand Slam contender every time she plays, and that this is something where we expect her to push on? And is that something you're expecting to see her, lifting more Grand Slam trophies by the end of this season?
I think so. I don't know about the end of this season, but I would certainly over the next few years would expect her to add to her slam trophy cabinet. I think now that she's proven that she can do it, she's got that first one ticked off. I think that can actually, yeah, release any remaining pressure that was inside. Like, she's proved that she can do it. And I suppose, there'll probably be other finals that she'll come up into where she'll be against, like a Sabalenka, and maybe people, she won't even be the favorite potentially. So I think I think she's probably even more dangerous now that she's got this one ticked off,
Mm.
because I think, you've got over that first hurdle, and it's a question of, yeah, how many more can you get? I suppose the reverse of that is, yeah, there's now extra expectation, extra pressure. But I think, with Conchita, with her psychologist, if she's sort of kept level headed, kept in that sort of mature, progressive mindset, learning and growing, I think she's got the right attitude to cope with that,
Mm.
hopefully. And yeah, it's always a tricky one because you don't want to sort of suddenly be like, oh, they're going to go and dominate the sport. And I don't think
Mm.
that's going to
Joel's going
happen.
to
I
predict her to win
don't.
Wimbledon, I'm sure. He loves that sort
Oh,
of
it's
prediction.
hard to do the double. I'm not expecting her to
The
do the
Channel
double.
Slam.
I don't think, possibly the US Open, but I don't think I would give
It would
her
happen quite so soon. I think
prediction
it
for Wimbledon.
tends to
Yeah,
be the
I don't
following
think so.
season, that things happen again. But I
Yeah.
mean, the confidence and the belief that she's got from this, I mean, the world really is her oyster in terms of the talent that she has. I mean, I can't get over how comfortable and how right it looked, her holding the trophy. It
Mm,
just felt like
yes.
it was always going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes you see players who lose their first final and it actually impacts them in quite a negative way. So I'm actually quite pleased that she hasn't had that necessarily that scar tissue that, sometimes might make it more and more difficult, especially if you're in another final. So I think you're right. She will be quite free in another final, and she might not be the favorite if she's up against a Sabalenka or a
Mm,
Rybakina or a Coco Gauff, for example, or an Iga Swiatek.
yeah.
And then you can play even more free tennis. I think she's more dangerous when she's the underdog. So doing what she did today was particularly impressive. And one player who has been an underdog the whole tournament, Chwalinska, in terms of her amazing tournament that she's had. I think she's won over so many fans here, Kim. I think I'm a huge fan of hers now. I think it's such a feel-good story. And although it didn't have, the final fairy tale ending, I think it's one where you can't be unhappy with what she's produced here and the journey she's been on and where she's at leaving this tournament.
I mean, she is now going to be at 21 in the world, up from 114. So that's a mighty jump. And she's also, this tournament just doubled her career earnings. So, it's an amount of money where she can kind of invest that back in to her, her game team. Maybe she can start traveling and add it, with a few extra additions to her camp, and just being able to get the direct entry into, the regular WTA tour tournaments will be a mighty boost. And well, I look forward to Chwalinska weekly. If you're
Yes.
now such a big fan, Chris.
Yes, it will be. And hopefully we'll
um,
eventually be able to say it completely correctly every time.
yes, because I'm still struggling with pronunciation. I know I think it's a very
Valinska, I think it
niche.
might be a bit more that. Please, listeners in the
Yeah,
comments, we phonetically, we're trying.
we're doing our best.
We're doing our best.
Yes. I also, just going back to Andreeva, I loved the fact that she cuddled her dog in the stands. I don't think I've seen that before, as a Grand Slam kind of
There are a lot
victory.
of dogs in Roland Garros this year,
Um,
I think. I've seen
I think they're
Potapovas,
really
Kalinskaya. Yeah,
embracing.
there's like a doggy
Yeah.
crash I've heard. But my favorite moment in the box was when I think Conchita was hugging someone else, didn't realize that Mirra had actually got up
Yes.
there. And so she wanted to like punched her in the back and was like, hang on a
I'm
minute,
here.
you should be hugging me, which I just thought was
I
hilarious.
know.
Very
Yeah.
true to their dynamic.
Absolutely. Well done to Mirra Andreeva, new Grand Slam champion. The day has finally come. I think, yeah, like you said, it did feel completely right that she got this trophy and was holding it. And it was just thought, yeah, it's all kind of the pieces of the puzzle are slotting into place for her career. Let's take a quick break now, but do join us in the second half where we'll be recapping all the doubles action and also looking ahead to the men's final tomorrow between Zverev and Kaboli. So do not go anywhere. Welcome back to the Tennis Weekly podcast. And before we look at the doubles action and rounding up the results so far there, as well as the wheelchair action, we let's chat Chwalinska a little bit more, Chris, because we're talking about she's going to become hopefully a regular fixture on the tour, and
On the
hopefully we'll be
podcast,
talking
yes.
on a bit more about her on the podcast. But
My new podcast,
oh
yes.
yeah, Chwalinska Weekly. Will she even be at Wimbledon? Like, because they have already taken the direct entry for Wimbledon, like from rankings prior to Roland Garros. So at the moment, she doesn't make the direct entry list. So she would rely on a wild card. So are we assuming that Wimbledon, based on her run here, would give her a wild card, given that she's like 21 in the world now?
I mean, that's a very big question. I think that's one that a lot of people are now aware of. I think people thought, obviously, if you're ranked high enough to be, seeded, you would get into Wimbledon. But people don't necessarily know that the cutoff for the entry list is before the French Open. And then anyone who is kind of outside of the top 100, 104, it tends to be after withdrawals or, injured players who can't be there or special rankings or protected rankings, they then have to play qualifying. So that actually does mean, as of now, she will be playing qualifying if Maja wants to play Wimbledon. So what's interesting is that last year we did have the Lois Brasson story. She made the semi-finals. The same calls were made for her to play Wimbledon with a wild card, but she actually had to play qualifying. She didn't make it through qualifying. And also, when you look at this, there is a question mark around what will happen based on the precedent from before, which is that it tends to be British players or former champions playing the last time. So last year's wildcard Kvitova, and then everyone else was a British player. So that's a big question. If there's only one spot going to a player from, outside of, the UK or the GB institutions, will that be, Serena Williams, or will that be like Maja Chwalinska is a big question that is on people's lips. So I'd be fascinated to hear what you think, Kim. I mean, I'd love to see her there. I think a wild card would be a popular choice, but I mean, it doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think it'll be a really novel one because, like you said, if she does get a wild card, she'll
She
have
would
to
be
be seeded.
seeded. Yeah,
Yeah,
she would
which is
be.
it's kind of strange
That's never
situation,
happened
but
before, by the way.
I think she deserves it. I mean, you've just reached a Grand Slam final, and it's on clay. She doesn't have much form on grass, before. So, and they might just think, well, do we need to jump on the Chwalinska bandwagon or not? I mean, I don't know what the All England club will think, but I certainly think she's deserving of one. If she doesn't get one, will she go through qualify? Will would you, if you were her, like kind of bother with the grass court season, or would you actually just take some time out to like digest this massive thing that's happened to you and kind of prepare for the hard court swing? I mean, what would you do if you were her and you didn't get a wild card?
I think a lot of players make the mistake of coming back and playing too soon after a big breakout run. If I was Emma Raducanu, I would have ended my season after the US Open win rather than play more that year. I don't think it necessarily helped her. I think Brasson, it didn't help either, going out early and qualifying. I think there's a lot of attention that isn't necessarily positive that comes from your next result. And it's not a great spot to be in that you've achieved great success and then you're made to go back to somewhere where your ranking would mean that you won't have to for the next year play qualifying for any tournament. So that chapter should be behind her now, I really do feel, having gone through qualifying to a major final. So I probably would skip unless I was feeling really, really good in myself, really, really confident with my camp, and that none of that noise is going to affect me. But I mean, I think there will be more opportunities for her to do something big. She is still young, and that maybe the attention around this one might not be the best place for it. But I mean, it is Wimbledon. If you fancy playing, I mean, why not? I think I would back her to do it and to qualify again. And who's to say she couldn't go on a bit more of a run? But I think she deserves a spot. I think she deserves a wild card, and I think you want all the best players in the world to be at Wimbledon, and she is a seed or should be a seed. So I would like her to be there. And it doesn't
There'll
feel
be a lot
right.
of people at her match. If she's put on an outside court, there'll be a lot of fans
Yeah, and
heading
Polish
to
tennis
see a
has a
bit of
huge
her.
following as well. I mean,
Yeah, there's a lot of Polish
tricky
fans,
question
especially
for
over
you
in the
though,
UK.
Kim. If you had one wild card to give, and it was Serena Williams or Maja Chwalinska, who would you give it to?
Oh, Wimbledon, I think would 100% go for Serena, wouldn't
You'd
they?
have
I
to,
don't know
of
about.
course you would.
Yeah, I mean, obviously she's won it multiple times. This may be the last year she. Yeah, we said that before, but I think yeah, you'd have to. But I kind of feel like both of them should deserve it. But I feel like there's no guarantee with wildcards because the reigning Queen's Club ladies champion, Tatjana Maria, she did not get a wild card into Queens, and she's the
No.
defending champion. She's the number one seed in qualifying, based on her ranking, but she's going to have to go through qualies to go on if she wants to try and defend. Do you think that's a bit
Yeah.
harsh on Maria?
I mean, I'm not a fan of that decision. I think it was such a historic year for Queens coming back, and she was celebrated as the Queen of Queens. It was a huge story. It was a fantastic story that she gave the tournament in the sense that it wasn't a big player that won, but it was, they really dialed up the mum, the fact that she was a bit more mature than some players on the tour, and the different game style. And I think that's where she is deserving of it. I think that the order of events, I think a few days ago, I saw online that she had been denied. Her husband came out and said that she was denied a wild card. I kind of thought, they're going to rectify it because the wild cards hadn't been announced yet, but she'd been notified she hadn't got one. And I thought, well, who is it going to go to? And the list came out, and unfortunately, it was just the Brits. And I do understand that there is a policy that apparently the LTA is bringing in more, that it will go to the Brits, which doesn't necessarily mean that Wimbledon will go to players outside of Brits as well. But I mean, some of them make perfect sense, like Katie Boulter, of course, Fran Jones, both having great seasons. And then we also have, Harry at Dart. And then the final one, which I'm awful at saying, please help me out, Kim.
Is it Mika Stojakovic?
Yes, it
I
is.
mean, I may be saying that wrong as well,
But
but
beautifully said and better
um,
than I could have. And so my question mark is actually around, I understand the young talent. I understand the top players from the country. I don't understand why Dart had the wild card for the main draw ranked at
mm,
171, and last year's winner probably I think could have had that slot, and she could have had a wild card for qualifying Dart. I think that would make most sense. Nothing
yeah,
against Dart beyond her comments she made about Lois Brasson needing deodorant. But on this front, I do think that there should be a rule, and maybe there needs to be a
but,
rule that if you won it last
mm,
year, you should be able to get a wild card the following year. I mean, it is unusual not to get in, I guess.
I feel like there's some LTA British tennis politics or nepotism going on, kind of with
I
with
think I think everyone does
with
it though,
that.
right? Like the French Open,
Yeah,
yeah.
you would, you want to promote and protect your British talent, but yeah, I do feel like, I mean, if Tatiana Maria was a household name whose ranking had drop down or so. Like they would totally have given her a wild card if she had won it before. I just feel like it's probably because she's not not particularly a household name that
Yeah, I
they've
mean,
just thought she's not going to bring
no one will care, they think.
punters.
But is
Yeah.
Harriet Dart going to either? Is my question on that
Well,
front. But
yeah.
I guess I would say they also could have thought that she would have got entry because Marta Kostyuk and a few players who had a deep run in Paris are still on the entry list and they're in the draw now. And so with withdrawals, she would have gone from number one seed. She was the last person not to get direct acceptance. So it's almost the perfect storm where maybe they thought she wouldn't need one,
Yeah.
and then she
Yeah,
did.
they've
So
taken that gamble that a lot of people do tend to pull out if they've done, gone deep at Roland Garros to pull out of their first grass court event because they would, would have thought normally they would have been there on time. But we'll have to wait and see. But obviously the Queen's qualies is well happening, but the weather looks terrible for
yeah,
Queen's, by the way.
Joel, pack
So
an umbrella. We need to warn him, Kim.
get his cagoule out.
Yeah, for the
But
Serena
we'll
Williams press
see.
conference.
I mean, the Brits have had a bit of a mixed bag at Roland Garros in some of the finals that they've been participating in. Unfortunately, Henry Patten and Harri Heliovaara lost the men's doubles final to Granollers and Zeballos 6-4, 6-2. So such a shame because they were in their first French Open final, weren't they, trying to get their third slam together, but it wasn't to be. They were up against the defending champions, but yeah, tough one out there as they'd come through the tournament so well, but not to be. But they will become world number one doubles players as of Monday, so they are number one in the world. So they've got something out of doing so well at the French as well. Let's hope they can kick on the grass and continue their good form as well. Women's doubles final is tomorrow. It's the top two seeds in that one, Siniakova and Townsend against Krunic and Danilina. So we'll report back on that in tomorrow's podcast. But yeah, also back to the Brits. Alfie Hewitt lost in the singles final to Takito Oda. I think he always gets beaten by Oda. I feel like he's lost quite a few finals to Oda, who's like really dominant. But Alfie did win with Gordon Reid in the doubles in the wheelchair event. So they've got their 24th Grand Slam doubles title together and their seventh French Open in a row. So how about that for consistency, Chris?
Goodness, I feel like maybe they should just at the start of the tournament next year just say, right, should we skip to the final? It's the same players who are just so consistent, doing some fantastic things on the tennis court. And I mean, we've got to be getting into record territory for some of these results. So I think we'll have to see what happens. But in the women's, Didi de Groot also got a win. She's back in form. I think
Yeah,
that's
one and
also.
love. It was a rout.
I mean, it was. I mean, we're very happy with the competitive women's final we got compared to that one. That's for sure, Kim.
Yeah, I mean, I was at the start of when Helinska and Andreeva when it was 1-1. I thought, oh, okay, well at least we don't have a double bagel like Wimbledon last year.
Yeah,
So
why are you
everyone was
smiling?
like breathing a sigh of
Yeah,
relief.
but it does make you think. How did that happen? When you see like score lines, which, but I mean, it really has to be an exceptional circumstance.
Yeah, I also think I know Joel mentioned the other day about how he didn't really want Helinska to. Well, not he didn't want her to win, but it would maybe devalue what Raducanu had done.
Very
Take some of that
controversial comments,
away from
Kim.
her. I know, but obviously that Raducanu's record is intact. She is still the only qualifier to have gone like all the way. So that's fine for the Brits. But
Well, for Joel.
for Joel, yeah. Let's finally finish with a little preview of tomorrow. I know you discussed it more at length yesterday, but obviously we do have Kaboli and Zverev in the men's final
Well, it's a good section here called
tomorrow.
Kim's thoughts
Kim's
on the
thoughts.
final.
Oh
So
gosh,
I'll hand over the microphone to you, Kim. Please give us your thoughts.
I do think Zverev's going to win. I think Kaboli. Yes, he didn't have to play that semi-final. He might be fresher, but sometimes that disruption to your rhythm can actually be a hindrance as well, like missing a round essentially. And I just think first final, Zverev's at least had three. Yes, he didn't get over the finish line and he has been nervous in those finals, but they've always been generally against, apart from Dominic Thiem, they've been against well, I mean, Dominic Thiem obviously was a very top player, but it wasn't like the big three or Sinkaraz. So I think surely with the experience that Zverev's got at that level, I think he will get over the finish line because I just don't think Kaboli, even though Kaboli's got a win over Zverev in Munich this year, I think it's Zverev's time. I think yes, there will be asterisks, I suppose, if he does win. You didn't have to beat, you know, Sinner, Alcaraz or Big Three. But I think this is kind of the moment for him to finally get
Now or
that
never.
silverware. Yeah, I mean, if he doesn't win now, it's sure. Yeah, I do think it probably will never happen if he's not going to beat Gaboli, who is new to this stage
Mm.
essentially. And they did play at Roland Garros last season, and that was a straight sets, I think, to Zverev. So I feel it could be four sets, but I'm going to go Zverev.
Yeah, I went for
Um,
the upset, Kim. I was really on the upset train this Roland Garros, and having watched the women's final, maybe I should dial that back slightly. I'm a little bit less optimistic that
yeah,
we're going to end in, kind of upsets galore. But I will
and
say one thing.
drama.
I did talk a lot about the semi-final yesterday. I have to admit something. I did have tennis practice booked for today, and I felt a little bit under the weather, so I cancelled it. So
Oh, you've done a
I
Naldi.
know, and so now I have to say, I mean, sometimes, I mean, it wasn't a Grand Slam final. I probably would have tried to push on, but it was just going to the local park, Kim. But I am a hypocrite, and I thought I should, out myself on the podcast for that.
Yeah, I mean, I do. You do have to feel for players because we all wake up sometimes and don't feel great, and think, oh, I just don't feel like I'm up to anything. And they've got the world's eyes on them, big stage, hundreds of, well, thousands of people have paid money, and I just the pressure of wanting to turn up and perform, not just for yourself, but for everyone that's invested in you, has paid to see you. Like I could not deal with that stress. So, and that make what do I do? That decision, like I just, yeah, I would struggle.
You
So
can't win, and
I,
you can't. There's only a lose-lose scenario, really, isn't it?
yeah, all human beings at the end of the day, and you've got to sometimes, with sports, people are not, they're still humans. They're just dealing with decisions on a different sort of scale or situation,
Yes.
but it's all tough. So yeah, but let's hope tomorrow we do get a great final. I think I feel like most of the shocks and the drama will have come earlier in the tournament, and I feel like it might be a
I'm
run of the
like
mill
touching wood, fingers
affair.
crossed, Kim. That could have been the
We'll
curse. We'll
see.
come back tomorrow.
Yeah, but we'll obviously come back tomorrow. We'll all be here to wrap up the final day of play at Roland Garros. So does wrap up day 14 here at Tennis Weekly HQ. So we hope you've enjoyed today's episode. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss a moment of action from Paris. And we'll be having one final sort of roundup tomorrow. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and all your favorite podcast platforms out there. So if you love what you're hearing, be sure to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube.
And you can stay connected with us on social media. We have an awful lot of comments that are happening right now, so please do join that conversation. And there's been a lot to talk about. So if you look at Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, and X, the handle of all of those is Tennis Weekly Pod. So you could join the comment section there, or do email us. If you'd like to drop us an email, that's tennisweeklypod@gmail.com, or visit our website, tennisweekly.co.uk.
And we'll be back on Sunday for our Roland Garros Day 15 finals catch up. But until then, it's goodbye from Chris.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time on Tennis Weekly.